So I've owned my Tesla Model 3 for just over a year now without a home charger at all. And by the way, if you want to see the full 1-year review, I'll be posting that very soon, so make sure you hit the notification bell on that. But one question I get asked a lot is how hard is it owning a Tesla Model 3 without a home charger, and is it an expensive way to own an electric car?
So as mentioned in the intro, I've owned the Tesla Model 3. I've done 14,000 miles in the car. I've been to places like Cornwall, Norfolk, Chichester, London, Middlesbrough, and I drive to work every single day. And I've done that all without a home charger and without even using the little granny 3-pin charger as well. I've just simply relied on the public charging network. So is it a big pain in the ass? Is it expensive? And why didn't I get a home charger? Let's jump into it. So I picked up my Tesla Model 3 long range in March 2021, and I'll be really honest with you, when I first picked up the car, I never really saw hardly any other Teslas, Model 3s, or even any other brands of electric cars on the road. So even though I didn't have a home charger, to be honest, every time I went to a public charger, they were often free because at that point, not many people had electric cars. And of course, that changed very, very quickly. But why didn't I get a home charger in the first place? Well, number one, we weren't sure if we would be staying in the house for more than a couple of years. And secondly, it's a terraced house, so we don't actually have a driveway. We've got on-street parking. And to put a charger at the end of the drive, we would have had to dig up the entire kind of front garden, put it down. It would have gone into a lot of costs. And I thought, there aren't many people with electric cars. Let's see how we can get on just using public charging. Now, at the start, it was actually really, really good. I live in Manchester, and in Manchester, there's actually quite a lot of public chargers. Even when I first got the car, there's a company called BEV, which had chargers all around the city. And the best part about this was that they were absolutely free as well. And it seemed wherever I went in Manchester, there was these BEV public chargers that were free, or the gym had a free charger, or the supermarket had a free charger. So actually, I quite enjoyed the challenge of just finding a charger and getting my driving absolutely free. Now, when I went back to my hometown of Great Yarmouth and in Norwich, or back to my wife's hometown of Saltburn in Middlesbrough, there weren't many public chargers there at all. So that was a little bit of a pain because it meant that I had to actively plan my charging in advance. Now, I use a couple of apps which I'll go into later. So if you're new to a Tesla, I'll show you how you can find those chargers. And to be honest, because I was excited about getting the Tesla and an electric car, that didn't really bother me at all to begin with. I was just loving the ownership of having a Tesla Model 3. But things have really changed a year on. So what's it like owning a Tesla Model 3 without a home charger a year on in 2022? So now we're a year on and tons of things have changed. First of all, I see a lot of Tesla Model 3s on the road, which to be honest, I really like. It's great to see that the community of Tesla owners and even electric car owners is really growing. So that's really good to see. Secondly, there's now lots of other brands doing electric cars. So there are a lot more electric cars on the road. Now, there are a few more chargers than when I first got the car, but to be honest, it is getting a lot harder to find a public charger. This is the first thing. So when I first got the car, I could just drive up to any of the BEV chargers and probably 9 out of 10 times it would be free. Now I would say it's the reverse. If I drive to the BEV chargers on the way to work, 9 out of 10 times they're usually taken. So it doesn't bother me too much still because I will just drive past them every day. I have to drive past them to park at work. And if they're free, I park there. If not, I don't. So that's one element. It is getting a lot harder to find empty public charging. It's still not a super issue at the moment, but I can see it becoming worse and worse over time. Secondly, as I mentioned, all of the public chargers in Manchester at the time were free for my first 6 months. So that was fantastic. I wasn't paying any fuel bill at all. Now that's changed. Almost all of them charge you. The BEV is 25 pence per kilowatt hour, which is still pretty cheap. But some of the other ones like Instavolt, which were never free, were still quite cheap. They're now, in some cases, up to 50 to 54 pence per kilowatt hour, which means roughly, if you were to charge your Tesla from empty to full, it would cost about £40 for a full charge. So not only is it getting harder, it's definitely getting a lot more expensive. And we're seeing that, of course, because electricity costs everywhere are going up. But of course, petrol and diesel has gone up a lot as well. Even in my wife's 1.6 Mini, it costs about £70 to fully fill that with fuel. And my Tesla, with the BEV chargers, costs around £10 to £20, depending on my battery level, but probably around £18 for a full charge. So it's still mega cheap compared to petrol.
So while we're talking about charging costs, while you can use the Tesla's inbuilt maps to find chargers, it's actually better to use some apps. And there's two apps that I use. So let me go into that, because they can not only help you find the chargers, but also help you find the cheaper ones.
There's two apps I use. The first one is called Zap Map, and the second one is called PlugShare. Now, the reason I use these two apps is because they contain all of the charging networks. You may know that you get BP Pulse, you get Instavolt, you get these BEV chargers, you get superchargers. But usually you will have to go into the manufacturer's apps to find out where they are. What ZapMap and PlugShare do is they show you all of those chargers in one app. They can often tell you if they're available, and they can tell you how much they cost as well, and if they're working. So I'll put a link to both of those in the description below, but they are my go-to apps when it comes to charging my Tesla Model 3. Now, if you are new to the Instavolt chargers, check out the link in the description below, because you can get £5 worth of free charging. It also gives me £5 worth of free charging too, so thank you in advance, but it's definitely worth checking out that link when you download the app, just so you get that £5 free charging and you don't miss out on that. Okay, so how much has public charging cost me since I owned the car? Because this is one area that I think people are super worried about if they can't have a home charger put in, or if they just don't want a home charger for various reasons. Well, over the last 14 months, as mentioned, I had my first 6 months of ownership where I really didn't pay for hardly any electric at all. All of the BEV chargers were free, and then I was using ZapMap and PlugShare to find other chargers around. So at the supermarket at Asda there was a free one. So my whole 6 months of ownership from the start, I didn't pay for any charging at all. Tesla were dishing out 1,003 supercharger miles as well, and I got a few free for doing these videos, which meant that when I did my long journeys to Norfolk or Cornwall, I also had the supercharging free of charge as well. This all changed, of course, after 6 months when BEV started charging and a lot of the public chargers went from a free to a paid model. But I can tell you right now, I've done the calculations and I was a bit surprised by this. In my 14,000 miles of owning the car, I've spent £156 and 50 pence. Yes, £156 for 14,000 miles. Now, of course, it's because half of the year it was free, but can you believe that? So I was just looking at the stats earlier, and even though the free charging has ended in the city, it's roughly costing me between £6.90 and £10 a week, doing roughly 150 to 200 miles of driving. And that's kind of like my average driving week. Now, of course, when I go back home to Norfolk, or if we do a holiday trip, I'll still use the supercharger, and I do use some free supercharge miles that I have left for those. Now, supercharger, the costs are going up slightly. You can find some for as little as, I think, about 28 pence, some go up to around 40 pence. So, you know, you're looking anywhere really for a full charge anywhere between sort of £15 and maybe £30 on the higher end. So it's still not super expensive to use a supercharger, but of course, if you can top up before you go at supermarket charger, they're often a little bit cheaper than the Tesla superchargers. So on a week-to-week basis, I'm mainly using the BEV chargers just because I drive past those on the way to work, and as mentioned, if I can get a charge, I'll get a charge usually once a week. I leave it there for 4 hours, pick it up on my lunch break, and I'm fully charged. And that charge will last me the whole week. It's a bit like topping up a car with fuel. It's not like you really need to charge every day. And I know a lot of people are worried about that. You know, how can I charge every day? Honestly, you don't need to. You can charge once a week, and with average miles like mine, it's usually free. Now, when I go visit my friend in York, there is an Instavolt there. When we go to Amy's dad's, there's a Genie Point there. So occasionally I do use those. They're not free, but it's usually once every 3 or 4 months. So a year on, would I recommend you buy a Tesla without a home charger? Well, you know what? I still think it's definitely doable. And in my case, it's not that hard. It doesn't stress me out at all. But there are a few caveats. The first thing is I would download ZapMap or PlugShare and see what collection of public chargers you have around where you are. Some cities like Manchester, London, Norwich, where I'm from, are very, very good. There's loads of public chargers all over the place, and there's quite a few of them in car parks too. So often it's not hard to get a public charge. Norwich has the new grid serve as well, where there's Tesla superchargers and other brands of chargers as well. So you could just drive out to those once a week. It does mean, however, that you will have to either park your car and go into work, or you'll have to stop and have a coffee if you're using a rapid charger. So just something to think about, but it is definitely doable. However, if you live in the middle of the countryside and for whatever reason you can't have a home charger put in and there's no public chargers, I would strongly, at the moment, unfortunately, avoid recommending you buy a Tesla, because even though you can probably drive out to a charger, there might be one at the supermarket that you go to, chances are if you're in the middle of nowhere and just there's one big supermarket with a charger, you're going to turn up at least 5 times out of 10 and someone's going to be plugged into that charger. Even if you check the app, someone might just turn in and plug in before you get to the supermarket. So it is really going to be a bit of a pain. Now, if you can use the granny charger, great. It's a good way of topping up your charge, but it is extremely slow. So I think, honestly, if you're thinking of getting a Tesla or any electric car and there just isn't a collection of public chargers around you, I probably would avoid it at this time. I know it's tempting. I know you want a Tesla, but trust me, it will be a bit of a pain in the bum. So my roundup is essentially the bad points are that you do have to wait around if you're just using public charging, or you have to go and do something like shopping. There's sometimes a queue these days, even in the superchargers. It doesn't happen all the time, but I have actually queued for a supercharger twice, which is a bit of a worry. I'm worrying about that when we do a long journey, because of course it takes 30 minutes to charge your car, and if there's already a queue, it's going to add a long time onto your journey. Fingers crossed it's not going to get that bad, because there is an expanding amount of Tesla superchargers just popping up everywhere. The next thing is that you have to plan your journey a little bit. So if you are going out into the wilderness or a small village, you do definitely have to check your apps, even in the Tesla or on your iPhone or Android phone, and just plan your journey a little bit. That's the bad point. The good points is that if you've got a business, you can actually charge your business for the charging of your car. The car definitely saves you money. So even though if there is a little bit of hassle and you have to sit around, it's going to at least be probably half of what you're paying in petrol or diesel at the moment. So a big money cost saving there. And the other big pro, in my opinion, is that the charging, even when public, can be done when you're doing other things. So when we go to the supermarket, there's a rapid charger there. It can charge my car in 20 to 30 minutes. And that's how long it takes me to do the shopping. So once a week we go shopping, we plug in, I come out, and the car's fully charged. I would have been going to the shops anyway, so it's not adding any hassle into my life. So there we go. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you did, I think you might enjoy this little video up here. So thanks for watching. Give it a like, give it a subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.